Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing a Reptilianne Ogdoadic deck profile. So I'm really excited for you guys, because with all the recent reptile support, and with the recent release of all of the Reptilian support in Burst of Destiny, this deck is an absolutely crazy fun deck to play. I really love the way that it plays, and with the consistency of the Ogdoadic package in this deck, it is super consistent and super fun to play. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can come part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards like getting your name in the every single video, getting a signed card sent in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your patron along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing two copies of Reptilianne Ogdoadic. Reptilianne Ogdoadic is a really good boss monster for this deck, and actually almost a kaiju-ish monster, because it has the ability that cannot be normal summoned or set. It cannot be special summoned except by attributing two face-up monsters with 0 attack from anywhere on the field. It's pretty much a kaiju because you can actually attribute your opponent's monsters from their side of the field that have 0 attack, and this deck actually reduces your opponent's monsters' attack points down to 0 with certain cards, which is really helpful to get this card out on the field. It also has the ability that once per turn, you can select and destroy one face-up monster opponent controls, and there can only be one face-up Reptilianne Ogdoadic on the field. It's a really good card, and I love it at 2, but you can only control one of it, so I only play it at 2. We then play 3 copies of the Reptilianne Tuner monster. This card is super fun for this deck as well, because if you control a dark reptile monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. Then if your opponent controls any monsters with 0 attack, you can special summon up to the equal number of reptile monsters or reptilian monsters from your hand as they have on the field that have 0 attack, which is pretty cool because if they have 2, you can special summon 2 from your hand. And you can only use this effect of this card once per turn, and if this card that you control would be used as a synchro material for a reptile monster, you can treat it as a non-tuner monster, which is really good for this deck because you play so many different monsters that you want to use as non-tuners, or you play a lot of tuners in this deck, so this card is really nice to be counted as a non-tuner or a tuner. It's very versatile. We then play 3 copies of Yami Niyami. This card is really good as a 3-of in here because during the main phase, if you have a reptile monster in your graveyard, quick effect, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard and then target one face-up monster your opponent controls and change its attack to 0, which is the first time we see the effect of dropping it down to 0, but get used to it, you'll see it a lot in this deck. It also has the ability that if your opponent controls a monster with 0 attack, then you can special summon this card from the graveyard, giving you a great play to just instantly special summon this card back and drop a monster's attack point to 0. We then play 2 copies of the level 2 Lamia. Lamia is a great tuner monster in this deck because if this card is in your hand and all monsters you control are face-up or reptile monsters, minimum 1, then you can target a face-up monster your opponent controls and change its attack to 0. And if you do, special summon this card, then take damage equal to that monster's original attack, which is not that big of a deal because you're not going to be taking crazy amounts of damage, and even if you do, you're going to get some great extending plays with this card that it will be worth it. And if this card is sent to the graveyard as a synchro material, you can target up to 2 face-up monsters on the field and change their attack to 0, which with certain cards in the extra deck can get you some really insane advantage. We then play for the Ogdoadic package. We're going to be playing a single copy of the Ogdoadic Abyss, which is a really good boss monster for this deck, because if it's in your graveyard, you can tribute 3 monsters to special summon this card, and then it also has the ability that once while it's on the field, then you can quick effect send all monsters from the field to the graveyard except face-up monsters that were special summoned from the graveyard, which is a great effect for this boss monster. We then play a single copy of the Ogdoadic Queen. She has a really neat effect that if this card's in the graveyard, you can tribute 2 monsters to special summon her, and if a monster is special summoned from your opponent's graveyard, then you can send a card they control to the grave. And if a monster is sent to your opponent's from your opponent's hand or deck to the graveyard, then you can special summon a light or dark reptile monster from your graveyard, basically working like a monster reborn. We then play a single copy of the Ogdoadic King. The Ogdoadic King is a neat card and a really awesome boss for this deck too, because if this card is in your grave, you can tribute 2 monsters to special summon this card, just like the Ogdoadic Queen. And it also has the ability that if this card or if your opponent adds a card to their hand except during during the draw phase or damage step, you can send a random card from their hand to the graveyard, working almost like a copy of Dark Law, which is a really great effect. And if a monster that your opponent controls is sent to the graveyard, then you can add a light or dark reptile monster from your deck or graveyard to your hand, giving you a search as well. We then play a single copy of the Ogdoadic Dark, just being really good at special summoning itself to your side of the field, and also it has the ability that you tribute a monster to special summon this card back from your graveyard, and if this card is special summon, then you can target 2 of your banished monsters, including a reptile, and return them to the graveyard to get you some additional plays. Play a single copy of the Ogdoadic Light. This card is really good because it gets you so much extending plays, because it has the ability that if this card's in the grave, you can tribute a monster, special summon this card, then your opponent can special summon a monster from their graveyard, but if they don't have anything, then they don't get to special summon anything. And if this card is special summoned, then you can target 1 level 4 or lower Ogdoadic monster in your grave and special summon it, but banish when it leaves the field, giving you 2 monsters on your field for the tribute of 1. We then play a single copy of Zoha. Zoha is a great extender for the deck that you're going to be sending to the graveyard with some of your cards in this deck, and it also has a neat effect that if it's sent from the field to the grave, you can special summon it from the grave, and it also has the ability that you can activate this effect that your opponent draws a card, and if they do, you can add an Ogdoadic monster from your deck to your hand, except another copy of itself. Then each player sends a card from their hand to the graveyard, but the main effect that you're going to be using on this card is if this card is in your grave, you can send a card from your hand to the grave to add this card back to your hand, which is pretty good to kind of change out cards and get the exact card that you want in the graveyard. We then play 3 copies of one of the best cards in the whole deck, which is 3 copies of Nunu. Nunu has the ability you can send it from your hand to the graveyard to send any dark reptile you want from the deck to the grave. And if you control no monsters or all monsters you control are Ogdoadics, then you can special summon this card from the grave, but banish it when it leaves the field, which the card you're usually going to be sending to the graveyard with this effect is going to be your copy of Noya. Noya has the ability you can send it from your hand to the graveyard to send a light reptile monster from your deck to the grave, and if this card is normal or special summon, you can add an Ogdoadic spell or trap from your deck to your hand. This card is going to be the card that you're going to usually search off your copy of the King of the Feral Imps, because what you normally will do will send your copy of Nunu and then revive it to your side of the field, send your copy of Zoha off the copy of Nunu, and then send a card from your hand to the graveyard to add this back, normal summon it, make your copy of your King of the Feral Imps, and then search your copy of Noya to then discard to search that copy of another card, or send your copy of your Light Ogdoadic to the grave and then special summon it to your side of the field, and then you'll get all sorts of crazy plays because you'll be able to get this back and add Water Lilies. We then play a single copy of the Danger Noodle. Danger Noodle is here just to extend your plays, and then I'm playing a really awesome surprise tech for you guys. It's a super big throwback to the Reptilian archetype, and I'm actually going to put it face down and get you guys to guess it. So comment down below what you think this card is, and we're going to reveal it in 3, 2, 1, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. So let's take a look at what this card is, and definitely comment down below what you think this one of boss monster is. So the person that actually used Reptilians in the anime actually played Earthbound Immortals, so I actually included a single copy of Earthbound Immortal Kokoraya. This card is a neat card to play in this deck. It's a super cool throwback to the origins of what the Reptilian archetype was, and it's really cool because the person that played them in the anime actually played this card, because what this card does is it's a really neat boss monster, and it's super easy to summon, because what it does is there can only be one face-up Earthbound Immortal, and if there's no field spell, this card is destroyed. Your opponent cannot select this card as an attack target, and it can attack your opponent directly with a 2800 attack point monster, I will add, and when this card is destroyed by a card effect except its own, you can destroy all cards on the field. That is really good that it's just a board wipe. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Monster Reborn, just to give us some extending plays in the deck. 1 copy of Foolish Burial, because it helps to get our reptiles in the graveyard. 3 copies of Ogdoadic Water Lilies. This card lets us send a reptile monster from the deck to the graveyard. Then if I have 5 or more reptiles with different names in the graveyard, I can special summon a reptile from the graveyard, which is basically an additional copy of Monster Reborn and Foolish Burial. We then play 3 of the field spell, which is Reptilian Recall. This card is insanely good. It has the ability that you can target a monster you control with 0 attack and 1 dark reptile monster in your graveyard. Destroy that monster on the field. And if you do, special summon the other monster from the grave. And if your opponent activates a monster effect, then you can target 1 monster your opponent controls with 0 attack and take control of it. And then special summon a reptilian token, Reptile Earth, level 1, 0 attack, 0 defense to your opponent's side of the field, which basically gives them kind of a token on their field. But the really neat thing is that's actually the summoning of Kokoraya in the background of the Reptilian Recoil, which is actually what gave me the idea to throw it into this deck. We then play 3 copies of Reptilian Ramification. This card is a neat card, and it's a really, amazing card because it lets you send any card from your hand to the graveyard to activate one of 3 really powerful effects. Either add a reptilian monster from your deck to your hand, add a reptilian spell or trap from your deck to your hand, except another copy itself, or change the attack of 1 monster your opponent controls to 0. This card literally does everything that you need it to do and more, which is why this card is a definite 3 of in this deck. We then play 3 copies of Reptilian Spawn because it generates tokens by banishing any reptilian monster from your graveyard. You can special summon out 2 tokens to your side of the field, which makes it super easy to actually normal summon out our copy of the Kokoraya. And then we play 3 copies of Snake Rain to make our copy of Ogdoadic Water Lilies live, because we don't want to draw into our high level monsters that are from the Ogdoadic archetype. You want to send them to the graveyard because it makes them live. So Snake Rain is a great card in this deck to send 4 reptiles from your deck to the grave. So that's it for the that's it for the spells and the main deck. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 2 copies of the level 8 Reptilian Synchro Monster. This card is really new and really awesome, because if this card is synchro summoned using only reptile monsters, which is what we're always going to do, it cannot be destroyed by battle or by card effects, which is insanely good because this card essentially becomes Beals. It also has an added effect that once per chain, when your opponent activates a monster effect, except during the damage step, you can quick effect target a monster that your opponent controls and change its attack to 0. And if this card is synchro summon card you control sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card, you can add a reptilian monster from your deck to your hand. This card is an insanely powerful boss monster, and I love this card's artwork, and I love what it does for the deck. We then play 2 copies of Reptilian Hydra. Reptilian Hydra is a really good play for this deck, because what it does is when it's synchro summoned, you can destroy all face-up monsters with 0 attack that your opponent controls, and then draw 1 card for each monster destroyed. You can draw up to 6 cards with this card if you play your cards right in this deck, and it's super easy to actually do, to be able to just basically turn the opponent's monsters down to 0 attack and then board wipe them and get so much card advantage, which is why I play this card at 2. 1 copy of Borreload Savage because Borreload Savage gets its additional negations, and 1 copy of the Chaos Ruler because you want to get cards into the graveyard, and it's very easy to use this card to go into some really good plays. 1 copy of Access Code because it pops stuff, or copy of Needle Fiber because it actually will let us special summon tuners from the deck, and then 2 copies of Reptilian Echidna. Reptilian Echidna is a great link monster because if this card is link summoned, you can target a face-up monster your opponent controls and change its attack to 0. And during the main phase, if your opponent controls a monster with 0 attack, you can add reptile monsters with different names from your deck to your hand up to the number of monsters your opponent controls with 0 attack. And also, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn except for reptile monsters, which is not that big of a deal because the majority of the stuff we're playing is reptiles anyways. We then play the same copy of King of the Feral Imps. I kind of want to bump this up to 2, but right now I'm just playing it at 1. It does search any reptile monster from the deck, but right now with all the other cards, I'm just playing it at 1. We then play a single copy of number 38 because it negates spells, 1 copy of Dingirsu because on summon, it can send a card that our opponent controls to the graveyard. I have considered dropping this for the second copy of King of the Feral Imps, but it is still kind of up in the air. If you guys want to test that out, you're totally welcome to. We play a single copy of the Rika Queen. This card is good because you can actually tribute it to actually summon out a copy of the Sacred Beast. If it is tributed, you get to special summon a level 5 or rank 5 or higher plant monster from your extra deck, which is going to be your copy of your Sacred Tree Beast that you're going to make on top of this card when you tribute it, which is pretty good. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really fun deck to play with, and it's very awesome, all the reptile support that we've been getting recently, especially giving new life to this deck, especially because Reptilian really needed an update, and I'm really glad to be able to do it for you guys. And it's just a super fun deck, especially mixing it with the Ogdoadic monsters is just super cool. So anyways, guys, guys, this is Dark Armed Duels. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.